Now that we have some basic components getting rendered and they're getting rendered side by side, let's go ahead and talk about how we can nest components, because that's going to be essential for creating meaningful React apps. Now, when we explored the components that we're going to be creating in the Thinking in React video, we know there's two more that are missing from here. There was a parent indecision app component that rendered these four, and there was an option subcomponent of options. So this isn't the final structure. What we're going to focus on is rendering these four inside of a new component, and we're going to focus on rendering a new component inside of this one. To kick things off, let's go ahead and create the parent component indecision app and get all these four guys rendering inside of there. Step one is going to be to actually define that component, and we'll do that up above. Right here, we're going to make a brand new class for our new component, and we'll call this one indecision app. Indecision app is going to be a React component, so we are going to need to extend using extends react.component, giving us all of that functionality. And we know we got to define render, so we'll set that up as well. In here, we can set up our JSX. I'm going to add those parentheses. I'm going to add that root div. And then the goal is to not render HTML, but to render other components. Now, we already know how to do that, right? We just include them like this. That's exactly what we're going to do right here, starting with header, uppercase H header, moving down onto action, uppercase A action. Then we have options. And last but not least, we have add option. Now the indecision app is going to render those four, but the indecision app component itself currently doesn't get rendered. So before we save the file, let's go ahead and get that guy showing up to the screen. Down below, what we're going to do is completely trash the JSX constant variable. This is no longer going to be required. Instead, we're just going to define a little JSX expression in line. In the past, we would use something like a paragraph tag, and that's fine for static stuff. In our case, though, we want to render a component. So we're going to add a very simple JSX expression where we create a new version of indecision app. Right here, we're going to set up indecision app exactly like we set up our other components in indecision app. Now what's going to happen? Well, React DOM.render, it is going to render indecision app. That is going to go ahead and do its own thing, rendering these four guys, and the end result should be the exact same thing showing up to the screen. We can go ahead and prove this by saving app.js. The browser refreshes. What changes? Absolutely nothing. But at this point, we now have a little bit of nesting. Indecision app is rendering these four guys, and your challenge for this video is to create a new component that renders inside of here. Down below, let's go ahead and outline that. You're going to be creating a brand new component. This one is going to be called option, and we'll be rendering multiple instances of it later. For now, you can just focus on getting one showing up. And we're just going to add some static text. Option component here. The goal is to not render option in indecision app. The goal is to render option in options, plural. And you're going to toss that right here below the static text. So how do you know if things went correctly? Well, over here, you should see options component here. And between these two lines, you should see your brand new line, option component here. Take some time to create the new component and get it rendered to the screen. When you're done, test your work, then go ahead and click play. How'd that one go? We're going to kick things off by creating the new class option. Now we do have to extend react.component. And now we can focus on getting some meaningful stuff rendered for option. I will define render in order to define what I'd like to show, and then we can set up our JSX. Inside of here, we'll kick things off with that basic structure, and inside of that div, we're going to go ahead and provide our static text. Option, component, here. Excellent. Now we can remove the comment, and we can focus on actually getting this guy rendered. And for the moment, I just wanted you to put it right here below this text. In order to create a new instance, we just define our new tag, option, perfect. Up until now, we've always used this self-closing syntax, which you see inside of HTML for things like our text inputs, but we actually can create a separate opening and closing tag. It's going to have the exact same effect. So here I open up option, here I go ahead and close option, and the result is identical. So if I save app.js, what do I get in the browser? I get my new message showing up exactly where it should. If I switch this over to the technique we've been using so far and save the file, we're going to get the exact same thing. So feel free to use either one. I always recommend just using this shorthand. Makes things a little easier, a little more concise. Now that we know how to nest components, we're going to take a look at how we can actually have our components start communicating with one another. Before we do though, let's take just 30 seconds to recap. In this one, we learned that our components obviously can render JSX, which means they can render other components. That allows us to create the nested structure that we're going to need for our applications. In the rest of the section, we're going to learn how we can delegate, how Indecision App can pass data down to these guys, and how these guys can let Indecision App know that something needs to change based off of user interaction. We're going to kick things off in the next video by talking about component props, so stay tuned. I'll see you then.